Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto, Willies. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. A great show, a lot of videos, so I don't have a lot of time to do a lot of talking, but welcome aboard, Paul Fleming from Powder Springs, Georgia. Man, you guys are going to bring it home, Paul. You guys are going to bring it home. Yvette Avery Herod in Atlanta, Georgia. Yvette, you guys are doing a great job. I think it's going to be wonderful. Liz Scheinman, it will be a ladies' night. It's I put it this way, let's put some money on it, my dear Lisa. Let's put some money on it. I am ready. Michael Rudnett is in the house as well from Brooklyn, New York. And so far, all the rest haven't showed yet. I'm pretty sure they'll be showing. Let me just tell you how I feel about this ladies' night. Just coming directly from La Señora Donna Brazile. Well, before that, let me read Michael's stuff. He says, Egberto, this one feels kind of heavy for the screen. Let's see what we got there for the screen. U.S. election. Let me put it on the screen for you and see what it's saying here. Going back there, we get it on the screen. It says, U.S. elections, European Greens called for Jill to step down. I read that a few days ago. It says the stakes of the elections could not be higher. Donald Trump has promised that if he becomes president, he will extend. I see all of that. Let me just warn people. Please stop worrying. I really want you all to stop worrying. All I want you guys to do is go out there and call your friends and remind them to vote. Look, Republicans are going against Trump in droves, from what I understand, in Georgia and in North Carolina. That's why you see the president, or rather the former president, going through North Carolina on the last day. You don't do that. Let me just say this, okay? I just want to point this out. Please, the only thing we should be doing right now is calling everybody that you know and telling them to go vote, and go vote with a friend. Okay? But again, Jill Stein will not be an issue, Michael. I promise you that. Jill, well, I can't promise you, but I am near certain that Jill Stein will not be an issue. People that are voting third party right now, yes, they're completely wrong for doing that. But again, we can't help that. We can only control what we can control. And there are a lot of our Republican friends that are out there doing the right thing. A lot of Democrats are out there doing the right thing. I wish in Texas more Democrats would be engaged, but we're a state that has so bad voting habits now that it is, Texas, the victory. If we get a victory for red, it's going to be Republicans that bring him over. And it seems like that is what's happening. Republicans are voting for him in drove as well. Welcome, Melanie Keelan from Barcelona, Spain. Carl Cox from Riverdale, Georgia. All right, so I think it's okay. But anyway, stop hyperventilating. Understand that the things are much in our favor right now. It is for us to lose. So all we have to do is keep the momentum that we're driving with, and it's a win. And I'm not talking about a slight win. Remember, I've been talking landslide for a long time, and many of you have been laughing at me. Now suddenly that Iowa poll comes out, and it's a very white state, and that very white state shows some movement without ads, without anything, any activity in that state, just the way that state is. And we get a poll like that, not a poll that's trying to be everybody's friends, but a poll that just says, these are the numbers, these are how people feel. So those of us that are progressives, or those of us that are conservatives who understand that Trump is an existential threat, and that voting for Trump is against all human values. Voting for Trump is also a poor thing to show your kids, but they will do it anyway. for people that are doing that, forget about them. We will remind them. We will remind them that they threw away their virtues and their morals to vote for Donald Trump at a later time. Right now, it is imperative for us to simply go out there and remind everybody to vote. And the good thing about it is that the votes that are out there so far, there's a good possibility that we are already ahead in the early vote, even with more Republicans voting in several states. Okay? So chill. As Donna Brazile would say, let's talk about it. Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock had the best message, or I should say the best phrase that should make sure. A couple of weeks, Donna Brazile was visibly concerned about the state of the election. She was visibly concerned about whether or not the change in momentum would have been a permanent one that affected the possibility of Kamala Harris being elected president of the United States. Well, she has definitely changed her position now. And you know what? I had never changed mine. I still am of the belief that we're more likely to have a landslide than not, more likely to have Kamala Harris than not as the president of the United States. And I think the numbers are starting to draw that into perspective, and the fear that you're seeing in the Trump in the Trump campaign is evident. The unwieldiness and the unhinged form in which he's acting almost shows that their internal polls are telling them the same thing the Harris people's internal polls are telling them. So let's go ahead and listen to Donna Brazile, because I love the way she said it and with the confidence that she said it. Check this out.
I think it's trending to Harris, but I don't have a strong conviction.
Tuesday, November 5th is going to be recalled in the history books as Ladies' Night. Not only are we going to see a historic first in our country, but we're also going to see more women elected to the United States Senate. And 2 Black women, one from Maryland, one from Delaware. So it's going to be a great night, but we still got to get those young people out to vote.
Let's be clear here. This isn't exuberance or anything like this. This is just simply by the numbers and by the policies and by where people's hearts are. Look, it is true that this isn't a fait accompli yet, but here's what we know. What we know is that the Republican Party has launched what can only be declared as holding women hostage, making their bodies the property of the state. There is no doubt about it. If you take a look at the deaths that are occurring in Texas, in Georgia, because of policies by the government telling a doctor that he has no control. Moreover, people are coming back to the realization that the phantom great economy that Donald Trump claimed he had was not really that great economy when people are reminded of the reality. And as long as, first of all, the ground game continues that Harris and her team's been doing, which means throw people out there and make sure they're getting their people to the polls. Make sure that not only are they getting their people to their poll, but they're encouraging others to get their people to the polls. Additionally, informing them of the reality, dispelling the fallacies that are coming out of the Trump administration. All of that, the Harris campaign has been doing like clockwork, very, very disciplined. When Charlemagne the God asked her why it is that she seemed so scripted, she made sure and tell him, I am not scripted. I am disciplined. And isn't that what the White House needs? Somebody who is disciplined and in command of what they want to do for the country. So here's a TikTok, folks. The TikTok here is 1, you've got to get out there and you vote. You have to get out there and make sure others vote. There's a whole lot of votes that have been banked so far. I think a lot of our female Republican women, I think a lot of them are doing the right thing. I have no doubt that when you start to enslave or show women or anybody that your policies is tantamount to enslavement of either their minds or tantamount to enslavement of their bodies or tantamount to saying the government will control your body, that people will have that visceral reaction, those that are not themselves sycophants or cultists. When you see white supremacists, one of Trump's buddies come out and say, I don't know what Trump is doing. I don't know what he's doing. And yes, most of those people that you see at Trump rallies are cult members. When one of his surrogates, a white supremacist, says that, you know that is where we're really at. So Donna Brazile said it all right. This is now Kamala Harris to win. This is now Kamala Harris's election to take and to bring home. And she has all the necessary logs in the fire to ensure that she is successful. It is just a matter of carrying out her plan, carrying out the plan of the group. And you know what? Just from the fervor, just from the enthusiasm that I see in the people, yes, a lot of Democrats and progressives, when I talk to them, they're scared when I give them the numbers about the way the numbers calculate based on not just gender gap, but other types of numbers. They get quite excited. They feel a little bit better. Of course, at the end of the day, anything can happen on Tuesday. But if we keep the trajectory, if the trajectory is maintained where people are informed, people are encouraged to go out and vote, I don't even think this is going to be the close election everybody think it's going to be. I think we're looking, I've said this from 6 months ago. Let me back up. I've said this from the time Harris got into the election, that this would have been a landslide. And I still think that the polls have the women's vote and Gen Z vote all wrong because they don't really have a choice but to have it wrong because they don't know how to poll it. Anyhow, folks, get ready, as Donna Brazile says, ladies' night. Ladies' night, in fact, it is. And, there's a reason why it must be ladies' night. Because anybody who, let's go ahead and let Reverend Warnock say it, because he says it best about Donald Trump. Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock had the best message, or I should say the best phrase, that should make sure every woman going out there to vote on November 5th, Tuesday, November 5th, remember who Donald Trump is and vote appropriately. Likewise, every man who loves women, understanding what they represent, the message is obvious. Listen to Raphael Warnock, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Focused on the people that I was seeking to represent. And that's what Kamala Harris is doing every single day. Donald Trump is making this election about himself and about what's good for him. In fact, he has an enemies list. She has a to-do list. And on that list is protecting women and their right to choose. Donald Trump is saying he will protect women. And then he goes on to say, I will protect women whether they want it or not. I don't know about you, but even as a man, that sounds rather ominous coming from the mouth of a convicted sexual predator. We don't need a predator. We need a president in the Oval Office. And that person is clearly Kamala Harris. I think the voters are seeing that. And I believe that this will be a tight race. That's the nature of our country in this moment. But the momentum is with her.
Raphael Warnock, senator from Georgia, he nailed it. And I tell you something, guys, I think that avalanche of women that you've seen in the early vote, in as much as a part of that avalanche is comprised of a whole lot of Republican women and independent women, it's going to tell a story. Like I told many people previously, women are going to save the country this time. Women are going to save the country again. Because, folks, as it turns out, absent what they're going to come out and do, we're in trouble. But I am confident, more so than ever, that the appropriate choice is going to be made. I am confident, so confident as well. Over the weekend, I wrote this blog titled, and let me put that on the screen. I wrote the blog over the weekend. I am sure we will win this time, but, and then I wrote the article. And for those people who needed a little bit of math, right? I did a little bit of math, and this part that I'm highlighting right here is it's a simple calculation, and that is a very conservative calculation based on what kind of votes we think is out there already. And I just gave a little example. But anyway, over the weekend, I also interviewed Bob. I want you to, right, why can't I remember Bob's last name right now? Anyway, let me go ahead and play it, and then we'll take it on the other side. Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. My name is Egberto, Willies, your host. Today, we're honored to have Bob Gatty. Bob Gatty is the founder of the Not Fake News blog. Gatty has lived and worked in Irwin, Jeanette, and Greensboro in Westmoreland County, PA, and attended Point Park College in Pittsburgh. He has worked for the Tribune Review and UPI, among other news outlets in PA. He is the co-author of Hijacked Nation, Donald Trump's Attack on America's Greatness. Hello, Bob. How are you doing this afternoon?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, well, we're in sort of near the twilight zone. It's about time for us to get to decide who's going to be the president of the country. But beforehand, you created this blog called Not Fake News, and I think you turned it into a podcast by another name. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, it started out as Not Fake News in 2016. And a couple of years later, I changed it to Lean to the Left. I just wanted people to know really what it was all about. And then I decided that it needed to have a podcast. And so I started the podcast, Lean to the Left, as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. I started out, as you indicated in my in your intro. I started out as a journalist and ended up working in Washington D.C. as a communications guy. I worked for two congressmen, one a Republican and the other a Democrat. Jim Florio was a Democrat from New Jersey, and I was his chief of staff and press secretary. And I worked for him for a couple of years, and then he decided to run for governor. I didn't want to go back to New Jersey, so I started a communications business, and I worked for business clients, trade associations, business magazines for about 30 years. And then I decided to retire and moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, because we have family here. And that's when I started my blog on my website.
Now, how's that going? How's your, I imagine right now it's about that time where people are anxious and looking for all that kind of info, huh?
Oh, man, I'm telling you what, I'm going crazy. I've got... I'm doing 2 episodes a week and on my podcast, and both video and audio. And right now it's all politics. And I just did I have a special that I do every month. It's called the Dixie Dems, and I have a guy from Georgia and a guy from North Carolina. And the three of us, since I'm in South Carolina, the three of us are the Dixie Dems, and we get together once a month and we talk politics. And this month, of course, it's all focused on the election. We just did an episode yesterday, which is now streaming, that focuses on the election, on the upcoming election, and both my pals from Georgia and North Carolina believe that Harris has a pretty good shot at taking those 2 battleground states, which, if that would happen, would be really big for her. So I'm hoping that they're right.
It would almost be game over. Actually, I looked at some of the polls this morning, and actually the polls are, even though I have come to the belief that many of the polls are not correct, I think these guys are so scared because they've undercounted Trump's vote for so long that they now believe that it's sort of skewed against her. And I think they're gonna, I've been for the last several months, I've been saying this election was not going to be a close election. Forget about what the polls are saying. I guess it will be clear whether I'm vindicated or not back in on Tuesday. But anyhow, so talking to these guys, and including the state where you're from, PA, why is it that Trump really have any kind of notion of possibly being president at all?
Well, that is really hard for me to understand as well. I just don't understand how, especially women, can support this man. I don't, and I don't understand how young people can support this man. I don't understand that. I don't understand how any person of color could support this man. I don't understand how any Hispanic person, any brown person from outside of this country could support this man. He's vindictive, cruel. It's just he's a criminal. He's been convicted of being a criminal. It's just impossible for me to believe. And in our book, Hijacked Nation, we begin with. It's all a series of essays from my blog site, Lean to the Left, and it tells a story in kind of a play-by-play sort of the major developments, political developments since the insurrection in 2001. And what's happened since then, and how Trump has continued to deny that the election was lost to Joe Biden. And there's a major section that deals with Project 2025. I have a couple of writers who did an outstanding job of pulling apart Project 2025 and discussing in relatively short essays the key elements of it and the impact that they would have, especially when.
Before, let me interrupt you there a second, Bob. Before we get there, there's a chapter in your book that talks about just President Biden's legacy. I noticed in the book you put chapter 5 after. You put Project 25 ahead of Biden's legacy. Here's the thing. One of the reasons Trump seemed to be competitive in this race is a complete misrepresentation of his legacy, meaning Donald Trump's legacy as far as what type of economy he had, as well as a misrepresentation of the corrective nature of Biden's economy, which pretty much cleaned up his mess and then launched forward. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it just is an incredible thing. Trump misrepresents everything all the way along. It's amazing to me how he can take a negative, something that where he's to blame, where he's got a big problem, and he turns it around as though that never happened, and he flips it around onto the Democrats. The whole thing about preserving our democracy. Democrats are very concerned about the effort that Trump is making and the promise that Trump has made to become an autocrat, to become a dictator. That's what he wants. And yet they claim that it's the Democrats who are trying to infringe on people's freedoms, on people's ability to live in a democratic society. It's just incredible to me, and
don't you think that the media has a lot to do with it? There it is that, like I mentioned before, when we take a look at the economy, I mean, President Obama said it best when he said Donald Trump's first 2 years, 3 years was really the continuation of his economy. And if you look at the charts, that's exactly what you see. And then after that came a crash for which people don't blame him for the pandemic, though he was responsible for the mismanagement of the pandemic, which subsequently Biden cleaned up.
Yeah, for sure. Like, how much Clorox did you consume in order to get rid of COVID? Huh?
Yeah. It is amazing. Now let's go ahead and make a shift here to Project 25, because I think we're probably half through here. You actually said that you had somebody who wrote, or some of your book consists of some good, well-written essays that kind of encapsulate the most important parts of Project 2025. If you were to go ahead and tell me, what should Americans really be concerned the most of? I mean, I have some points that I think we should be concerned of, but I like hearing what other people have seen in that 900 something page report that pretty much is. Yeah, I don't know if you remember at one time it used to be the contract for America that the GOP used to have. Yeah. Now this almost is more than a contract on America, but a contract to destroy America.
Oh, absolutely it is. And I mean, it's hard to pull it apart. You take a look at the at what they would do with respect to abortion, with respect to contraception. For crying out loud, I can't understand how it is that Republicans would actually want to infringe upon people's ability to protect themselves when they're having an intimate situation. They it's just hard to imagine. But you go into immigration. You go into what do they want to do? They want to deport. They want to spend billions of dollars to deport people back to their countries. People who are really actually needed in this country. For example, I lived in Maryland for a long time, and in Maryland, hard-shell crabs are a big product. Yeah. And the area where those crabs come from largely is Trump country. Those people who work in those crab factories are largely immigrants. Local people don't want to be picking crabs apart.
Right. Yeah.
But that whole industry would go down the tubes if Trump was able to get in and actually impose his immigration deportation plan.
Well, nobody ever said that hate was sane, right?
Oh God!
Nobody ever said hate. But here's the thing that what a lot of people don't understand: the immigration issue would just be, and I don't know if you've discussed this on your blog cast before, but immigration would simply be another cash cow for Trump. Let me give a good example. You just made a great point where you said in some parts of Maryland, the people that are cleaning up the crabs and getting the crabs, etc. A lot of it is the immigrant communities, and that applies to the picking of the peaches in Georgia, or the picking of the tomatoes in the Southwest, etc. But here's the kicker. What you think Trump's people would do? They would simply turn the blind eye to anybody who pays a bribe to continue to have those people in. So it is, people look at it as say, well, he's going to deport all these people. I look at it as being unable to create a new market, and that new market is a black market where you bribe to maintain those people who are working. Your thoughts on that?
That's an incredible thing to even postulate. I live here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina right now, and it's where we moved when I retired, and we built a small home in a neighborhood. It wasn't a custom home. It was a home that was, built by a big housing manufacturing company. And the people who actually did the work on this house were immigrants. Mm-hmm. When I wanted to expand my patio in the backyard, I decided to hire some of these folks. And they did excellent work, and they did it for a very reasonable cost. And they were happy to have the work. Now, if Trump begins deporting all these folks, the housing manufacturing industry is going to suffer greatly. And yet it's those same people who are supporting this man. I don't get it. Do you get it?
Well, no, I don't. But here's the funny thing, because you've just gave an economic lesson right there. Here's the kicker. these are the things that Donald Trump stands for. He stands for increasing tariffs across the board, which means all these people that buy these cheap Chinese trinkets, which is what Walmart is full of,
right?
Their prices will go up. That's number one. Number two, you talk about the construction industry losing people, which means all the costs of homes, all the costs of construction goes up. Who pays the price again? The middle class person. All the fruits and the fruits and vegetables, etc., that gets picked because we don't have the manpower or the person power to do that. Yep. Those prices are going to go up. So everything that he does will actually have a hard impact on his people as it bloats the pocketbooks of those people that, again, inflation, somebody makes the money from inflation, right? Yep. And those are the people at the top.
Yep, exactly. Well, it's hard to understand, how all of this could come down. But the bottom line is that if Trump wins this election, we are going to be in some deep doo-doo when it comes to our economy. The whole idea of these tariffs that he wants to impose. Can you imagine what the cost of an automobile would be? Many of the parts of our cars are
made overseas.
Overseas.
Yeah.
And I just bought a new Mustang Mach-E electric car. Mm-hmm. Most of that car, the parts of it came from other countries. Mm-hmm. That car, when I bought it, was $46,000. Imagine what it would be if Trump's tariffs went into place. They wouldn't be able to sell those cars at all.
I think on electric cars, he wants a minimum of 100% tariff. So you'll be talking about almost $100,000 for your car.
Exactly right. And so tell me this, why does Musk support this guy?
Oh, there's a reason why, because he does business with the government. And if Trump is there, he'll be Trump's stooge, Trump would be his stooge. And he'll be able to get all the contracts, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's right now we are, as Fareed Zakaria said today, we are in the process of becoming Putin's Russia, a kleptocracy, which is what, and again, there are a lot of people that don't have a problem with that. But anyway, look, the name of the book is, and I tell you what, folks, it's a good one. They're called Hijacked Nation, Donald Trump's Attack on America's Greatness by Bob Gatty, your person on the screen right now, as well as CJ Waldron. Why don't you give me a closing statement, my friend?
Well, listen, I thank you so much for having me on. And you guys, if you're interested in looking into the some of the facts as to what went down since the insurrection, with respect to Donald Trump and the Republicans, check out Hijacked Nation. You can find it on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble. There's a hardback version. There's a paperback, and there's a Kindle version that's available.
I will make sure and have all that information along with links in the blog, because I mean, the better informed we are, the better decisions we're able to make. But look, it's been my pleasure to have you on the show, Bob, and I hope you'll come back. And look, I am 90% sure on Tuesday night, those on the progressive end of the spectrum will have not only a happy night for the presidency, but vote for the House and the Senate. So,
you know what? I hope you're right. I'm beginning to feel that way too. I was a little shaky last week, but today I saw I keep getting these emails from people that are running betting sites, political betting sites, and money is now moving to Harris.
Right.
Last week it was moving to Trump.
Right.
But this week, it's moving to Harris.
Right.
And you know what? I think maybe his garbage truck thing.
That was fun. But it was funny on so many different ways. It was funny because he couldn't get into the truck. It was funny because pasting your logo on a garbage truck almost says your logo is garbage. It's amazing that he didn't see the connotation of putting your logo on a garbage truck. But look, it's been my pleasure to have you. Bob Gatty, author of Hijacked Nation, Donald Trump's Attack on America's Greatness.
Thank you so much.
Brother Rudnins, I want this on the screen where it says, here's the truth. Trump supporters don't measure his success by what he does for them. They measure by what he does against people they don't like. That's why they see him as being successful. This is why they will never abandon him. His tormenting of the others sustained them. But you know what? Even though that is partially true, as I pointed out in a few other things, the one thing that isn't true is when they start to starve or their legs start to fall off from gangrene, unable to get hospitalization, etc., that will change it. Now, why is it that people should be voting for Kamala Harris? Because of the things that will happen to all of us. And here is Dr. Donna Kim Murphey. I want you to listen to what she has to say, and then we'll take it on the other side. Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Today, we're honored to have once again Dr. Donna Kim Murphey. She's a neuroscientist, neurologist, community organizer, historian of science, race, immigration, poverty, and health. She's also the founder of Prognosis. And I tell you what, welcome to Politics Done Right. Donna, how are you doing today?
Great. It's good to be back. Thanks for having me again.
Well, look, first of all, before we get started into the nitty-gritty of what we want to talk about, tell me a little bit about this new company that you have called Prognosis, but it's spelled not I-S, but U-S. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah. And kind of our motto is basically that the journey with dementia is much easier with us together than I alone. And we kind of have built the company around the idea that community is really central to navigating this illness, which is fundamentally an illness that impacts not just the person living with the disease or the condition, but the family around them. And that can be biological family or chosen family, but it becomes a responsibility of other people because the people living with the disease actually become more and more dependent. They cannot live independently as the disease advances. We also are interested in the racialized health disparities in the disease because we have twice the incidence in people who are African American and 1.5 times the incidence in people who are Latino. It is Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month in November. It is also, interestingly, National Family Caregivers Month in November. And those two things are very much related in this condition of dementia, not just Alzheimer's, which is the most common kind of dementia, but in all of the other kinds of dementia as well. And beyond the disparities that we see in incidence, I just want to mention, because I am Korean American myself, that there are disparities that we see because of language access issues, immigration status issues, other kinds of things that other marginalized or minoritized populations face in terms of access to resources that are culturally fluent, that are language specific, that are safe to access for these other communities.
You know, it's interesting because over the last several weeks, because, you know, we're in this period of time where you have to select Medicare. It's time to switch over from Medicare to Medicare Advantage or vice versa or whatever you want to do. And I have been pointing out to a whole lot of people the dangers of Medicare Advantage and why they shouldn't follow folks trying to get them to leave their good Medicare Advantage with a good Medigap program to go into these private things. Now, the reason I brought that up to tie into what you do as far as healthcare dementia is concerned is we also know that the private sector in minimizing costs, etc., they don't treat the problems with dementia as illnesses as serious as they should.
Right.
While people that are going to the election to vote in the next day or so, they have to decide who to choose. And they have to understand that whoever they choose has a material effect, not only on themselves, but the health of their people. And if I recall, Kamala Harris has a program that fits exactly into what you've been speaking about with regards to dementia, etc. So why don't we talk about that and also relate it to the politics? Because I think it's extremely important that we do so.
Oh, I totally agree. This is why I thought it would be great to have this conversation with you specifically. So, a couple of things with Medicare. You're exactly right that right now is the opportunity, that open window of enrollment for Medicare. If you are on a Medicare Advantage plan, I actually highly recommend to caregivers who have loved ones with dementia that they consider switching to traditional Medicare or parts A and B, because there is now a program that is like an innovative program through the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, their Center for Innovation, that is called the GUIDE model. And this model actually specifically concerns itself with not just the person who has the diagnosis of dementia who has suspected disease, but also with the person caring for them. Because as I said before, that person becomes absolutely vital to the welfare of the person who has the disease. So they recognize that and they say, look, we are going to not only pay for diagnosis and therapy, we are going to pay for care coordination, care navigation, 24/7 caregiver support. We're offering $2,500 a year of caregiver respite, which, to be honest, if you're one of the caregivers, like I'm a support caregiver to multiple people in my family, you burn through $2,500 in no time. But you know what? Something is better than nothing. And right now there is nothing. And so this new program has been rolled out as of July of this year. It's supposed to run 8 years, and then they're supposed to make an assessment as to whether, they're going to continue or expand the program. This, is under threat. Trump is always insinuating or stating explicitly that he's going to undo all kinds of, all parts of Medicare. So, yes.
Let me just say that this is not conjecture. Mike Johnson, about 4 days ago, went on and he said, when they asked about the elimination of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, he said yes. And then he kind of corrected himself and said, we have to make major changes, but we're removing regulations, which, as you know, means pre-existing conditions, which, as you know, a program like you're talking about, throwing that into the private sector, they are going to try to make money out of dementia, which in effect prevents that person who is caring for that dementia person from getting the resources they need for the actual care.
Absolutely. And to just give people an understanding of the magnitude of this issue, which is going to touch every single one of us. We have 7 million people impacted right now with this disease. We estimate there are like 2 people for every 1 person with the disease who's involved in the care of that person. That number will more than double in the United States over the next 25 years. Everybody will know somebody and will, in all likelihood, be involved in someone's care. And this disease costs for every person with the diagnosis during the course of the illness something approaching $300,000. So it cannot be handled often by the person themselves or even their families without assistance. Right now, we're having to do all kinds of, gymnastics around how do I spend down my assets or redistribute my assets in a way that allows me to qualify for Medicaid when they look back 5 years. And yes,
that is something that bears extreme explanation here. They require you to get health care, to get the insurance from the government to lose all your assets before you qualify for anything. So you have to be poverty stricken.
Right. And, in places where they haven't expanded Medicaid, right? It's nearly impossible, right? This is what pays for nursing home care. Many people at the end of this disease, if they decide, right? Many families decide or that they can't or that they won't actually put their loved ones into nursing homes. And that's another challenge. But if they decide to put their loved ones into a nursing home setting, they have to qualify for Medicaid or often they cannot afford it. And to do that, you do have to basically, get rid of all of this person's assets. So, talk about the inability to have intergenerational wealth, for instance, right? No, you have to get rid of all of it. And this really bankrupts individuals and their families. Women who are doing most of the care, 2/3 of the caregivers are women, about 1/3 are men. They have to quit their jobs, right? They have to, make all kinds of concessions, I think, that they wouldn't ordinarily have to make in order to care for their loved ones who are aging and have this disease. It's often the case that they're also simultaneously caring for young ones in the family. So they have these multiple duties. They're considered the sandwich.
Both on the top and the bottom, their parents and their kids. So I think they call them the sandwich generation. Yeah.
Exactly. And just thinking about how that's going to impact gender disparities across the board, economic, health disparities, right? The caregivers actually suffer tremendously in terms of their own health because they neglect themselves and having to do all of this care for a loved one who requires 24/7 supervision as the disease advances. They don't have time for themselves often. So it's a huge problem. The plan that Kamala Harris has put forward for supporting caregivers is something that has been dubbed Medicare at Home, right? Right now, if you qualify for Medicaid, which again, very few people do, especially in states like Texas, if you qualify, you may be able to receive some home-based services. Medicare does not support those services. So she wants to allow Medicare to actually cover that, right? So in-home support, which would be huge. Most of our families do actually choose to keep our loved ones at home. And that's kind of what is most desirable, I think, for the dignity of that individual.
Oh, yeah.
To stay where that is familiar to them, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So she's now proposing to actually invest in that, actually, to invest public resources into Medicare, this idea of Medicare at Home that would both include those home-based services as well as, she's tackling paid leave for family caregivers so that they can actually afford to be home and to spend that time that is important to many people with their loved ones.
So look, dementia and many other chronic illnesses will affect all of us at some point in time, whether it's your parents, your kids, or yourself. That's a statement of fact. Now, here's the interesting thing, and because we need to close out now, but here's what I want to say, Donna. Politics matters. Who you vote for matters. Whether it is, and it's not solely this election. This election is extremely important that you vote your interests, that you vote your health, that you vote your personal economy. But it doesn't stop here. Texas is a state that doesn't accept the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. Even though we pay for it, we don't get it because and our Republican legislature claimed to be fiscally responsible as they deny coverage and make many of their citizens die. So let's be very clear here. Your vote matters. And as Dr. Donna Murphey has said here, it is something that we have to work on. So, Donna, please give us a closing message. And I know this isn't supposed to be political, but I need you to be political, not only for the next election, but for subsequent elections to ensure that we start getting the resources that we deserve and that we've earned out of our government.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say to any caregiver out there, anybody who has an aging parent now where maybe you have some suspicion that something is going on with them, this is really going to touch all of us. And we have to think about what is in the best interests of our families, right? Political identities aside, what is in the best interests of our families? And here, I think there is no question, right? In this case. And I have my own beef with the option that we have, right? On the political left, I have my own beef. And yet, I think it is absolutely critical that we support Harris in this election and in the future, people who actually state that they will protect these, this right to healthcare, at least in some fashion, right? We still have problems with it. I know you and I, Egberto, have problems with the way it's done.
Absolutely.
But it could be better. But I think here we have an opportunity with one candidate to potentially make it better. And with the other candidate, we don't have that opportunity at all. And so I think it's clear what the choice is.
Dr. Donna Kim Murphey, founder of Prognosis, as well as a community, a great community activist. I've known her for a very long time. She is essential to our community. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right. Thank
you so much.
Absolutely. So Donna Kim Murphey, great lady. Let me tell you, first of all, Paul Fleming, I hear you. It's the same thing with Texas. Nobody should be voting for a Republican legislature in Texas or Georgia because the legislature is getting them killed. But here's the problem. Enough voices like ours. I don't have enough penetration in the rural areas. I don't have enough penetration in those areas where we can inform those people that worse so than urban areas, they are suffering from not having the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. The people, that is what a congressman said that I interviewed him as well. What's his name? I can't remember his name. Get sick, you die. I'm going to look him up right now. I always forget his name when it's time to come on air and say it. But his name was Congressman. Where is he? Congressman. Anyway, there's a congressman who went on the floor and said that. Love the guy. Anyhow, we have a great. So let's back up. It's amazing that the urban areas, even without the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act, because we have so many hospitals. Alan Grayson, thank you very much. So many hospitals and charity hospitals are included. Sometimes we can mitigate that problem. But you live in Timbuktu rural area, you ain't got no hospitals. If we got more of the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act, guess what we would? We would get hospitals built, more hospitals built in rural areas to solve that problem. But again, nobody's out there telling our rural brothers and sisters that they're killing themselves by electing Republicans. All right, Patrick Magnus says, I shared that video with both my siblings. It's so important, Patrick, so important. I have it at my site as well. Anyway, brother Tom Zarnick has a limerick. Let's get busy. It goes like this. Donald Trump wants to go back to what the world once was, when only certain people were part of America's cause. Kamala Harris wants to go forward from darkness to the light, to a future where freedom and prosperity are everyone's right. Trump threatens retribution to faithful MAGA applause. His appeal for violence should give everyone pause. One candidate sees America's future as hopeful and bright. The other see only darkness, gives reason for fright. Your vote tomorrow is your voice. It's your ballot, your choice. So vote as if your life depends on it, because it really does. That's my big brother who wrote this. The Politics Done Right poet laureate. Thank you, my brother. I love it. I love it. I love it. That is every time you come out with one, I don't want to say better than before, because they're all so damn good. So I'm not going to use that phrase, oh, it's better than before. It is so damn good. I have one last video, but I don't have the time to play it, but it's going to be in the link for you that you can go see it. It's about what Meet the Press and what Burgum, what's his name? Burgum or whatever. The governor of one of those Dakotas or those places have to say. But anyway, we are at the end of the program. I hope you enjoyed it. We have a lot to cover, but let me just say this, folks. I'm writing an article and let me just give you a taste of it. I started to write the article, so let me give you the taste of it. I'm going to put it on the screen. I'm still refining it, and it's going to be quite a bit longer than this. But the title of the article that I'm writing is, and let me put it on the screen, A Message to Every Woman and Every Person of Color on the 2024 Election. And the subtitle is Every Woman and Every Person of Color has a responsibility to dispel a cancer that permeates our society. The cancer will continue its metastasis if we continue to give it our consent. I am not speaking from a position of prejudice or malice. I may make a mistake in my wordiology, but will be ready to learn and apologize where necessary. This election is about freedom, respect of the Constitution, reproductive rights, personal rights, and much more. More important than those very existential issues is human equity. In the aggregate, women and people of color have always borne the bulk of inequity, and that has an effect on every issue enumerated above. And that's what I'm going to talk about. And I think it's important. It is important for people, specifically women, all women, and people of color, to realize that this is in their hands, and they must not allow this to go south on them. And I think where the things are going right now, we're going to be okay. And I think we're going to be okay by quite a bit, but we'll see. Anyway, I've got to get out of here. But before I get out of here, I want to ask all of you, those who have the wherewithal to do so, to please become supporters of the program here at KPFT, our streaming at Politics Done Right, our streaming Politics Done Right. And how can you do that? The different forms of supporting our program can be found at politicsdoneright.com/support. politicsdoneright.com/support. Please visit and support the program however you can. But alternatively, subscribe to our newsletter. Become a paid subscriber to our newsletter. And as a paid subscriber, you get all of our books free of charge online. And not both my current book and my subsequent books. But also, I just upgraded my Restream, where I have videos that I can do directed only for our paid subscribers. So I want to ask you guys to please subscribe again to our newsletter. That's at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Can't do this without you. Anyway, got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Support for this show, Politics Done Right, comes from politicsdoneright.com, publishers of How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It. As I See It, Class Warfare, The Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom. It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willies. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.